Welcome back to the FitBiz Journey Podcast. It's going to be an amazing episode today because I have a friend of mine, Will Grant here, who is a professional BMX rider and, not driver, because I actually messed up before and said driver, but rider, BMX rider, and also a social media influencer. But his story is amazing, we're going to talk about it in a minute, because what he went through, injuries, where he came from, and then how he turned around from basically no followers whatsoever on YouTube to all the way up to almost 100,000 now, and it was in less than about 6-9 months or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Please, just tell us before we actually get into it, I almost forgot. I think it's worth mentioning that we met about, 6 years ago or something like that?
Yeah, I was pretty young. I was probably 19, 20 years old when we first met. Yeah.
I used to be a kid too. I was in my 20s. Now I'm in the high 30s. I just turned 30.
Old school.
Anyways, we met 6 years ago, and both of our lives were completely different. I actually just came here to the States, and we met. I worked at a restaurant. You worked at a restaurant, basically the same place. Yeah. And that's where we met. And then it's just so cool that 6 years fast forward, now we are both here.
And we really haven't had too much contact ever since then. You know, I've followed you and I've seen the things that you were doing and always had nothing but respect for it. But it was actually up until the photographer that we both work with, Leandro Gongora, after all the photographers I've ever worked with, he's by far my favorite.
Mine too.
And when I had an interest, I showed him a little interest. Yeah, I was thinking about writing a book. He instantly said, "You got to speak with Daniel. You know,
awesome.
No matter what, just drop everything, get an appointment, speak with Daniel, and he's gonna be able to point you in the right direction." And here we are.
That's awesome. And Leandro, good point. It's a good point you mentioned that, because so the way we technically re-met, I guess we could say that is, so he started to become basically a social media influencer, and so he seeked out the best photographer, if I say it right, to create the content for your social media, right?
Exactly. Well, when I was younger, probably when we first met, I was doing a lot of modeling, doing a lot of catalogs, and just expanding really my own brand then, but just wasn't really doing it correctly, just doing it all for myself, really. And when I had this idea of really what I was going to do and really to put everything into social media and creating as much content, I looked back and I went to find the photographer that I really enjoyed working with the most, and who I felt like we created the best content, had the best energy with, and I ended up calling Leo, and pretty much ever since I've been making sure to meet with him about once a week and just shooting and filming. And he didn't really have too much experience in video then, and I had no experience in video at all. So we have been kind of learning this whole process together of learning how to video, and he's obviously mainly from a photographer background, but getting awesome photos, awesome shots, and then just learning the video ever since. And with every week, we've both just improving our own skill and just behind the camera, in front of the camera, and everything.
Awesome. Did you guys hear that, by the way? He's meeting with a photographer and videographer weekly to create content. Yeah. And the reason I'm saying this is because lots of our listeners, gym owners and personal trainers, or business owners for that matter, they just go on to buy stock images online, get images or whatever they use, and then they use that. But the problem that I actually had a post about this, and lots of people commented on it, and they said, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." Is what I was talking about, is that why would you promote somebody else? Like, it's almost like if I would create these pictures and you create these pictures, they would buy it and use it. They're promoting you. That's good for you, but not good for the business.
Yeah, exactly. You want to build your own brand.
Exactly.
You know, and then meeting with videographer, a photographer weekly has been absolutely huge with it, you know, and there's so many people out there who are wanting to expand their brand as well, who are photographers, that if you find and meet, you can build that brand together, you know, and that's kind of what me and Leo have been doing, and it's been awesome, because kind of the better my stuff does, you know, the more contacts he gets, and the better his stuff does, you know, the more contacts I get as well. So it's just working together, and exactly.
So I mean, speaking of brand, that's a good segue to get into
yeah.
what it is that you have built this far. I mean, start with maybe a little bit of background story, we were going to get into, right? And then just work your way up to here.
Yeah, before you say, let's completely track back, just like you said, because what I want the people to understand that because now they think, oh, well, he's a professional BMX rider, so of course he can afford to have the photographer, videographer, all that. But no, start from scratch where you started this whole thing, and then just tell everybody that how you ended up with the 20 cameras that are here in this room.
Well, pretty much for the past like 5-6 years, I've been putting everything into my racing and just being a professional BMX racer, traveling around the world, riding bikes, which has been great. But it was so limited in the fact that not the sport, but just myself, my own thinking of really just doing everything for myself. And my whole point was just trying to make Will Grant as great as Will Grant can be, And then it led me to the point where I was just pushing, and everything was breaking down around me, not just mentally, but especially physically as well. I ended up breaking my collarbone. I ended up exploding my whole entire knee, cracking my femur. I mean, I had pains everywhere from my feet to my hands, and throughout my whole body. I had trouble sleeping at night. I just had so much pains, and it was just from crashing and training and doing so much, but without doing the recovery. It's like if you take a lawnmower and you mow a lawn every single day, but if you don't go in and sharpen the blades and change the oil, it's going to break down. Mm-hmm. And that's really exactly what happened. And my whole life, I've done nothing but train myself physically and try to build up my own ego. And then when all of that was taken away from me to where I was literally just stuck in my house, I couldn't walk, I couldn't do anything, just healing from all of these injuries, my first thought was actually, okay, how can I train even though I can't train? So I started watching the videos of me racing, and I started realizing a thing that I could help on was my mind. Was that I noticed when I was on the gate and before that start, my mind was just going absolutely crazy. It was like taking a wild animal in a cage, and when you open that cage, he's got to hit the sides on the way out before coming out smooth, So I realized, okay, how can I calm my mind down enough to be able to be focused and perfectly coming out of that start and coming out of that gate? And it just led into meditation. Mm-hmm. And I started meditating, I started breathing, and then at the same time, my brother, who's been an absolutely huge inspiration to me, he told me about Wim Hof breathing. Mm-hmm. Which is essentially a consecutive deep breaths and then followed by a breath hold and then cold therapy. But what all this got me doing is it got me slowing down. It got me to stop, to breathe, to realize what was going on. It got me outside of myself. It got me outside of my ego. And when I got outside of my ego, I started breathing. I started realizing really everything what was important, and everywhere where I was kind of slacking, where I could do better, and everything of really what I wanted to accomplish in this life and what I really wanted to do and what was really important. And it was life-changing. And then when I was breathing, then one good habit leads to another good habit, leads to another good habit. And then I started sitting down to read books. And I could never sit down long enough to read a book, because my mind, I was just always tripping over myself. I was going so fast. And when I was sitting down long enough to start breathing and start reading books, and a whole new world opened up. I had a whole new perception on absolutely everything, to where, I mean, yeah. And then a whole new world opened up, and just one thing led to another, and then here I am, pretty much.
No, that's basically how it goes, but
yeah,
something happens in life, and then that forces you, in your case, it basically forces you to figure out what to do.
And honestly, I don't think anything else would have done it. Mm-hmm. I was so hard-headed, I was so stubborn, stuck in my ways. I think I had to lose everything, to where my whole life was about riding bikes and myself, and I had to lose all of that to
gain what you just gained now.
Yeah, absolutely.
For business owners, for athletes, and how I transition over is basically the same thing. A business owner gets stuck, and especially personal trainers, in a daily grind of just working, and they always say, oh, I don't have time to read a book, or I don't have time to do this and this and this. So that's exactly what you have experienced, and lots of times business owners or personal trainers, they eventually go through something like that happens to them, or lose their clients, whatever happens, and then they're like, okay, sit down and start finally analyzing it. And I really like what you said earlier, that you have started watching your own tapes, basically, or videos, as you call it, and then analyzing yourself how you did.
Yeah.
And then before, when you came in earlier, you were already recording, and then you mentioned it too, because you were here a week ago. We talked about, which we'll talk in a minute, that you were starting to, not only that you haven't read book before as much, like a few years ago or a year ago, but now you're actually writing your own book, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But when we talked about it last week, what was cool is that you took action right away. So that's one, and then the second is that how you watch yourself on YouTube. That we uploaded the vlog that we have here around our company, basically. And then you already told me that, man, I have already caught myself doing a few things that I need to fix.
Exactly. You know, and that's something that we've learned from sports so much. You know, one is you have to do, when it's game time, there's no option. Oh, I'm not ready, I have to figure out this, no, you have to take the package you got and do the best you can at that moment. And that's helped me a lot. And then reviewing tapes is, again, back to an athlete background is every day of I created that content or I filmed whatever I filmed, I'm going back, and during that editing process, I'm seeing just how can I improve, not just in front of a camera, but behind the camera, but just as a person, you know, because I notice when I'm talking where my mind was at that time, you know, and your thoughts are just, again, habits. You know, and when you start changing your habit of thought, then you start changing your habit of action, and that changes your life.
I feel like a lot of people don't take time to reflect nearly as much as they should, and everyone is always scattered all the time. Even like our team and our trainers, like they feel like they're doing a million things at the same time, and like multitasking is one whole thing, but just going back to back to back, but not taking the time out of their life to stop for a second.
And that's what breathing and meditating does. It is, especially if you're a business owner, like you're always go, 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 go. But we have to have time of just nothing, where we stop and just breathe, because that's when all of the information that just happened is going to go into our minds and get processed to figure out what's the best thing that we can do next. You know, and me, just like everybody, I feel like I was definitely an extreme case, because I was so, you know, go, 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 to where I never gave myself enough time to stop and reflect, stop and breathe, and to let everything that was going on process. And when everything is processed, then all of a sudden, that's when your best ideas come. You know, because we have to be able to quiet our minds down enough to listen to our highest, most purest self.
It's hard too. It's not easy. But is that what I was looking at your website? Is that what your 6-week program is really focused on?
Yeah. So my 6-week program is pretty much everything that I learned from when I was at my most broken. My most broken physically, my most broken mentally, my most broken spiritually, and everything that I learned to dig myself out of that rut and to start creating really the life that of my dreams, you know, the life that I never really thought was capable. And I know that right now I'm just starting, you know, like what I see for myself is way more than what I've already accomplished now, you know. And that took enough time to sit down, start breathing, and to see this vision to see what I'm capable of. Because before that, again, I was just tripping over myself and just maintaining from day to day. My biggest worry then was just getting to practice sober, you know, and it was just doing what I can to survive and just getting by. And then when I could stop and breathe, now I'm learning how to thrive and not just survive.
Exactly.
Awesome.
One action step that I would ask you guys to do, if you're a personal trainer, what you should do is take time, just like Will said, and reflect on yourself. But the way you do that is what I ask our team to do, and we ask our team to do, is to schedule, I usually say, about 10% of your time that you, per week, if you work 40 hours, then 10% of that. But start out with only 1%. So that's about, what, 20 minutes or something like that, right? So let's say just take 20 minutes, start with 20 minutes to keep it simple, each week on Monday or Sunday, whatever day you want, and then plan out your whole week and design your week at least, and then see, you know, how you did it. That is one though. But if you're a gym owner, then I recommend do the same, of course, but on top of that, record yourself as when you do a staff meeting, when you talk to staff, because all the time I see this. So you look at body language. You don't see your own body language, but so often you have this like RBF, like resting bitch face, basically. So not great. Now I have to put a R, rated R. Anyways, so when you have that RBF, then the team can be put off, and it doesn't matter what you say. Your body language is about what I can't remember what it is. I will research and put it in the comments below. But I think it was 64% or something like that is your facial expression that actually sell what you are doing. So if your facial expression doesn't check up with what you're saying, the team doesn't do what you say anyways. And then they will say that they will already feel it and do opposite what you're doing. So it's very important that you rewatch what you're doing, because when your face changes and then you have that, and the team will do the opposite, or they will know what you really think.
But I got something on that.
Go ahead.
Because what I notice is when people are noticing that resting bitch face or whatever, if you're sitting there, where's your mind at? You know, so that's usually a reflection of what you're thinking about at that time. So again, like this is something I've learned from just breathing and meditating, but when you're controlling of where your thoughts are, of like when I'm trying to have a conversation, I'm thinking of the best, highest point of view. You know what I mean? When I'm trying to speak to you, I'm speaking to your best version. And that will change my facial expression. That'll change the whole energy of the whole entire room. And on top of that, that'll give whoever I'm speaking to a little extra energy to bring out their highest self. So if you find yourself like, oh, why do I look like that at that time? It's more of, where is your mind? Like, are you in the present moment? Are you there trying to bring value and help the people that you're with? Or are you thinking, oh, I don't want to be here, like I'm just doing this to get by, or, you know, like that. And a lot of times, if you just change where your mind is at, change that whole perception of where you're at mentally, it's going to change how everything is portrayed. You know, and it goes back to just watching the videos. When I was noticing that I was speaking in this certain way, or my face looked this way, what was I thinking about at that time? Where was my mindset? Was I really there for other people, or was I there for myself?
Your own head, or
Yeah, exactly.
I love that, because it's also whatever part of business you're in, whatever part of life you're in, that's something that's so applicable. Whether you're in sales, it shouldn't be about trying to make the sale.
No.
It should be about what that other person is doing across.
Yeah, because that's just going to limit your sale.
Exactly.
You know, yeah. Like, you know, the most selfish thing that you could do is help out the people around you in the best way that you can. Mm-hmm. You know, it doesn't matter if you're a sale, you know, a business negotiation, just trying to help a random person. Like, it's all kind of back to the same thing. The better that I can help you, if you're in my group, or if you're in my world, if you're in my community and in my state, that's just going to create a better world for me.
Yeah.
You know.
And what you just said during the meetings, I mean, and then what you see in a meeting that you don't want to be there. Yeah. And then the perfect way that you can test this, just look at your staff during a staff meeting, look at them, and then go into a sports bar when their favorite team plays. There's a way they are all in, right? Like, everybody's so excited and everything. Obviously they're pissed off because the team is losing. But the point is, they're 100% focused and they're all in on that game, right? But if you see them like not paying attention during the staff meeting or whatever they're not doing, then obviously you can tell that they are not there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
they're just empty bodies. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about a little bit on this episode, a little bit deeper about meditation, how you started and how it helped you. And then we will have to have Will back here on another episode where we're going to film, and we're just going to talk about how you actually went to basically from 0, I guess, subscribers on YouTube and social media combined, and now you have almost 100,000 followers, if not more by the time this airs. And so that would be really great if you get really deep into that, because and by the way, guys, so don't forget that this episode is also on Facebook, on IGTV, and also on YouTube. So go to the website to check it out. You can also go to my first and last name danielnier.com/podcast, and then you can see all of the platforms, all the audio platforms and all the video platforms. The reason why I'm saying to check out the video, because on this episode there are like 4 models sitting here, including Lizzie. So you definitely want to check it out. And Will, if you type his name into Google, you will see tons of shirtless pictures of him.
Sometimes even pantless.
So now you guys definitely have to go check it out. But anyways, let's get back to meditation a little bit.
Yeah. Back to meditating.
I've tried and failed meditation so many times, so I'm very excited for the word.
Yeah, you haven't tried enough. Yeah.
I guess not.
Meditation is a skill.
Absolutely.
You know, like the first time that you ever drove, you know, how many times did it take you to behind the wheel driving for you to actually get comfortable, good at driving?
She's still learning.
Yeah. You know, and it's like, and meditating is a lot more difficult than driving. You know, it's like riding, it's like reading. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And it's not that you can be bad at it and you can't really do it wrong. Just do it. Just breathe. You know, and there's a million different methods of meditating. There's a million different ways to do it. You just do it, and you'll find which ones you like and how to do it. But if you're just starting, honestly, one of the easiest ways to do is YouTube. You can go on YouTube, type in guided meditations.
Don't you have a video on this, by the way?
Yeah.
Well, we need to link it into this.
Yeah,
so
for sure. I have like a whole meditation series on my YouTube channel because that has literally been one of the probably the most beneficial thing to really change my life, you know?
And your meditation's a lot more on breathing, is what I'm getting, right?
Well,
okay.
like, I mean, I'm always kind of playing around, you know? My favorite type that works best for me is I've been doing the Wim Hof breathing, which is, it's pretty intense, you know, it's pretty intense. But then after that, I'll just spend 5-10 minutes, and sometimes later in the day, 20, you know, it depends on that day. If I'm overwhelmed and there's a lot going on, I got stuff coming at me from this angle, stuff coming at me from this angle, and I realize I'm not performing well at any of them, I'll just stop it all. And even if it's just 5 minutes, we all have 5 minutes, you know, or even if it's just 25 breaths, I'll just sit there and I'll make sure my spine is straight, and I'll just be, and I'll close my eyes and I'll picture that 1, and I'll picture that 2, and I'll go all the way to 25. And after that, all of a sudden, 70% of the oxygen that we take in is being used by our brain function. And we're only breathing the bare minimum enough just to survive. So everything is fueled from our brain, from our heart to our lungs. Everything is fueled off that oxygen. So the more oxygen that we're taking in, the better everything's going to function, the clearer and better our mind's going to work. So if you sit there and after 25, you know, conscious breaths, afterwards, you'll notice that you'll see clear. All your senses are activated. Your mind is clear. And when you're doing this on a consistent basis, then you're getting a clear perspective on life and then over a long term, you have a new perspective on life. And then as far as everyone says, oh, I can't meditate because my mind's always running. Mm-hmm. That's the exercise. Yeah. Yeah, like it's like anything. When your mind is running while you're doing something, whatever part of your mind is running, that's the percent of the intelligence that you're losing away from whatever activity that you're doing, right? So
quote that.
Yeah. So the exercise of being able and just focus on that breathing. Say you're on number 6, and this happens to me still. Mm-hmm. Especially if I have a long, busy day. If I'm on breath number 6 and then I start going, oh, I have this podcast, and then eventually, boom, my mind realizes where my mind's at, and I'm not thinking on my breath. Mm-hmm. I catch that, okay? I let it go, I notice it, and then I just go instantly back to my breath. That's okay. And that movement of noticing that mindfulness and going back right to your breath, that is a deadlift for your brain. Mm-hmm. That is a bench press for your brain right there. Like, that's how you strengthen and exercise your brain. Mm-hmm. That's one repetition. And then if you're doing that over every day, if it's 5 minutes, if it's 10 minutes, and if you're doing that on a consistent basis, then your brain's just getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and you get better at everything you do.
So you just focus one thing at a time, what you're doing, right? Basically on the numbers, and then your brain all of a sudden, think about something else, you just catch it back and bring it back in complete to the number, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it doesn't matter if you're training a client, you know, or you're editing a video or you're writing a book, it doesn't matter what it is. Say if you're training a client, when you're training a client and then 30% of your brain is thinking about what you want to eat for lunch later, okay, that means that only, you know, and then plus there's a part of switching that you again lose. You get taxed, you know? So then you're only using 50% of your intelligence towards that conversation, that training, that client of you're working with right there at that time, as opposed it's okay if you notice, hey, I want lunch later. Notice that, let it go, and then go back to what you're doing. And then if you do that on a consistent basis, if you let all of your intelligence, all of your being, everything you have towards whatever activity you're doing at that time, that is going to be the happiest client you've ever had.
That was amazing. That we need to cut that whole thing out and reuse it, repurpose it, because everybody needs to know that, because that's what most people think. And the book, I just want to put it in there, and we soon have to wrap this episode up. But the book, The One Thing, have you read that?
No.
By Gary, I forgot what's his last name, but we'll link it into. But the book, it's called The One Thing. It's probably the best book I have ever read in my life, and
really?
then that helped me personally. And then what you just said is in that book, and then that's the guy who actually broke it down so many times. And there's so many research that multitasking doesn't work. What you just said is exactly why it doesn't work, and then you explain it without reading the book too. So because what you just said, when your brain switching back and forth, lose just like that, loses.
You get taxed.
Exactly.
You get taxed for sure. And a lot of people don't know, but I was actually a personal trainer. During an injury earlier in my career, I became a personal trainer, and then when I got a good sponsor deal, I was that trainer sitting, 5 more, 5 more, you're good. And then I realized another thing that was just holding me back,
Exactly.
And then, for sure.
That was perfect that you said that, because we see that all the time in the industry, and that's why we always say, the reason I had this podcast, you guys, by the way, you already know this, I don't know if you know this, but the reason I had this podcast because we want to revolutionize the fitness industry first, we need to start that, and then that helps us. If what you just said, if you're able to eliminate that, and now because of this episode, the trainers are able to use what you told them and not able to focus on their clients and give them better results, that helps our ultimate goal of eliminate obesity in the future, because now everybody's giving way better results and way better experience.
Absolutely.
So ultimately, it really helps everyone.
And then another thing of, just helping is the most selfish thing that you could do is when you do dive into that client or dive into that book, that's when you're going to have the most fun.
Yeah.
That's when you're going to be lost in that moment and enjoying that moment more than, oh man, when is this client over? You know what I mean? Like, you're just making your own life miserable, and you're wasting their time and wasting their money. So everyone's wasted. But when you put everything into that client, you're going to get more out of it.
Yes.
You're going to grow more. You're going to enjoy that time, enjoy that experience that you guys have together, and both you guys will get a lot more out of it as well.
We're going to use this also in our training too, at the client experience section.
We have our entire academy for our personal trainers when we bring new people on board, and we have videos of how to teach them how to do things, and we're about to clip all of that right there. Captivating.
And we definitely need to use this also for our promotion. I mean, to be able to put it in on Instagram, YouTube, everywhere, because this is what all trainers and gym owners need to know. Because if the gym owner doesn't know, he's not going to tell the trainers to do.
No.
If the trainer doesn't know, he's not going to do. So you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so this is perfect.
Exactly.
All right, so let's wrap up this episode, and we're definitely going to have you back for another episode. When
I'm
we're gonna
excited.
Talk. Yeah,
I can't wait.
Yeah. So, guys, and Will, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Oh my God, you're great.
And guys, please make sure that you watch this episode, rate this episode, subscribe if you have not subscribed yet.
5 stars.
Yeah,
at least.
Yes, please. It's very important for us, because that's how other personal trainers and gym owners are going to find us and able to help each other out. So please share, please watch, and don't forget that you can watch this on video and not just listen to it as well. So see you next time.
See you.